Support the Amigos podcast on Patreon or PayPal and receive cool perks and rad swag. Visit our page at everythingamiga.com/support.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about colonization.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron.
Man. Controversial boat.
Where do you stand on colonization, Aaron?
Well, are you asking me in a comedic way or in a serious way?
I'm asking you, take it however you please.
Listen, it's funny. When this game was released back in the day, I don't think many people gave two thoughts about it. It's just another civilization type game. You're going to the new world. You know, it's sort of a they've sort of taken certain elements out of colonization to whitewash it, if you will. But I don't think it was a big deal. Today, I think you would not do so good if you tried to release a game like this. It's not like this game's full of like X-rated stuff, but the topics that are involved in it and the actual access to what happened would cause some people to get irritated or feel uncomfortable, I think, Bode.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Now, where do you stand on interplanetary colonization? You know, there's a lot of people that don't want us to go to Mars, don't want us going to the moon, messing around up there, because they're afraid that we're going to disturb some sort of like invisible, fragile ecosystem up there. What do you think about colonizing Mars?
Well, listen, I can only talk about it given the knowledge that I know from people that are smarter than me. One would assume that you couldn't really screw up the moon. I mean, it's effectively a big dead rock, right? It's not
you can't screw up the moon.
You know, now Mars, who knows? We don't know as much about Mars. So again, it's probably not going to hurt anything. So I don't see a problem with it. I mean, listen, to do anything on the moon, we've got to build some, structures up there. To do anything on Mars, effectively, we're going to terraform that if possible, whatever means we can. So,
well, I played the board game. I've got it pretty much figured out.
Which board game?
Terraforming Mars.
Really? That's a game?
It's a game.
Really?
It's a game and a lifestyle.
Is it? What would you? Listen. Let's say you're king of Mars. Okay, you just got up there. They just freshly terraformed it up. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your first act as king of Mars?
Mars Orchestra.
That's so you really got your priorities straight. It's not.
I mean, I got to have a job, right?
That's what you're not gonna. So, what about food and stuff?
It'll work itself out.
Yeah,
it always does.
And of course, there's water. There may be water on Mars.
We just build some supermarkets, and the stuff will appear. That's how America works, and America is Mars.
The way I figure it, I would run Mars like West Virginia's ran to a certain degree, right? You
What's
put up
that
a home. You get you one of those. You take a bunch of old barn wood and you make yourself a little shack and an outhouse up there on Mars. Dig a ditch. One thing about Mars is just like Earth. Dig a ditch. That's your outhouse. That's all you need right there.
I love it.
And then you get the water out of the ground up there, and you see what you can do about making, some sort of whiskey out of it. I think that's some sort of Mars still. Put that thing together, and then the next thing you do is get a couple of those moon buggies, right? And then you see how much weight they can pull, and that's what you do on Saturday night. Moon buggy,
and then you start bootlegging.
Yep, and you need the moon buggies to get past the revenuers to transport your moonshine.
You're bootlegging to the next planet out. What's the next planet after Mars?
I guess it would be Mars shine. Now think about it.
Yeah,
I like that.
Trademark that.
Bam.
I love it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, Aaron, I'd love to keep talking to you about Mars shine.
It is riveting.
But we should move on. Let's talk about Amiga news instead.
Yes, sir.
Amiga news.
All right, Aaron, our first story this week comes to us from our Amigos Discord. Last week, for the very first time, Amigos fans from all over the world gathered together in the first ever virtual pub event. Aaron, this was a smashing success. where we had tons of people participate. We had Chris Folds there, Pix was there, Figgy, Reflection was there, Seb, all kinds of great folks. Jason was there, Edvin. So lots of fun times had. And I just wanted to let everybody know that that was truly an awesome time. I was there for a little bit of it. I was coming off hot and heavy from Coco Talk, my standing obligation to that crowd.
Yeah.
But it was a good time. Aaron, where were you during the virtual pub event?
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. They invited me to the virtual pub event, and I didn't know how to get to the virtual pub event. I had no idea where to go, and so what I did was I just didn't go. I didn't know how to get to it. I didn't know what he was talking about. You know what? So there you go. So I missed out on the virtual pub event, but it looks great. And I'm still not 100% sure how to get how they got there. How did they do this again?
So we have this thing called the Discord.
I've heard of that, yeah.
And on the local meetups channel, the one and only Chris Folds posted a link on Zoom to get to the virtual pub.
Oh, I see.
That's how it went down.
Okay, yeah. I like the idea of a virtual pub. It's a lot better than what I usually have, which is the solo pub, where I open up Zoom to an empty screen and just get drunk until I pass out. Not as much fun.
Now, I believe that this is going down again, and at some point in the future, perhaps we'll make this a monthly thing. So you'll have a shot as well as everybody else. So if you are a supporter of Amigos, either on Twitch or on Patreon, you can get in on the action. Just join our Discord server, and if you need a link for that, just send me an email. Let me know who you are, and I'll let you on, and you can take part. Also, it's a good time.
It's like International Computer Pub.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I love it. All right, Aaron, let's move on. We're going to be talking about your favorite Amiga, my favorite Amiga. That's right, the A1000. Now, Aaron, of course, probably the most famous user of the Amiga 1000 was the one and only pop artist Andy Warhol. Who can forget, if you've watched any of the footage of the Amiga unveiling, of him painting that sort of aged rock singer in multiple colors.
Debbie Harry?
Yeah.
She was hot. Come on.
Oh.
Listen, she's also super talented. Give her a break, Boat.
So people have always wondered what became of all of the images that Andy painted, because it wasn't just her. He also did several other things, both on and off stage. And originally, these images were going to be published in a book. But unfortunately, for various reasons, that never came to pass. And I think that for a long time, some of these images that Andy put together using the paint program on Amiga have been lost to the mists of time. Well, lost no farther, because there's a company called Ion Tank that's actually preparing an Andy Warhol Museum Amiga exhibit. Okay, so I guess the Andy Warhol Museum is a touring production, and they have a special exhibit within that dedicated to the Amiga 1000. Now, how did they do this? Well, this is going to shock and offend some of our users, so look away if you're squeamish. What they've done, Aaron, is they've gutted what they call quote-unquote decommissioned Amiga 1000s, okay? I don't know what the word decommissioned means. I hope in my heart of hearts it means these are broken units. They didn't gut, working machines that have been decommissioned as in not in use anymore. But anyway, they've put what they call solid state electronics inside of them, which probably means a Raspberry Pi or, some sort of an FPGA, maybe even an Amiga or two are inside of these. And then they've taken the CRT, and they've taken out the actual CRT, and they've put an LCD monitor in there, and then they've added a glass overlay to kind of give it that CRT glow. And what they're doing is that they're setting these machines up, and you can interact with the Amiga just as it would have been. It's running an Amiga emulator, and you can go in and you can run various apps or programs. You can look at Andy Warhol's art. You can do all these things. And the keyboard and the mouse and everything have also been wired up to this device. So you're still using the original Tank mouse and keyboard and all that stuff. But my question for you, Aaron, is this sacrilege? Is it sacrilege to take what is possibly a working Amiga 1000, the rarest of all Amigas, and probably not the rarest, but it's definitely not the most common, and take all the guts out of, probably throw the guts in the garbage and put some sort of emulation device in there?
One would wonder what this cost. because
Yeah.
I mean, Amiga 1000s can be bought for, let's say, even if they cost $500, you know, for the setup. It seems like this is a lot of work. I wonder how many they put out there. You know, if they put out like 2 or 3, it seems like it'd be cheaper just to get a 1000 and just stick it out there and put the stuff on it. This seems like a lot of work. I mean, if you look at I don't know, some of these pictures, what's going on in some of these?
From reading the article, they said that they were worried about the transportation of the Amiga. They were worried that something was going to get jostled around or something like that. And you know, the disk drives in these things, I know from personal experience, are not always perfectly working. So but you're right, especially going overboard with all the work that they did on the CRT. It seems to be overkill. But I guess maybe
here. Look at what is this?
Yeah,
you can't see this. It looks like they're grinding holes in plastic. What is that?
Yeah, they're grinding down the glass and everything.
I mean,
it
they
does
did a
seem
good
to be an
job.
incredible amount of work. Yeah, so it's maybe Ion Tank needed some justification for the amount they were charging to put on this exhibit, and they're like, well, we need to find something to do with this to make it seem like it was us. And so instead of just putting out a 1000 with a couple of discs, they went through all of this trouble. But I will say that at the end of the day, you look at the pictures of this thing sitting on the desk. I think that the CRT illusion would probably fool 99% of the. And let's be honest too. If you're going to the Andy Warhol Museum, the Amiga exhibit might not be first on your list unless you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. So, but you know, in terms of the ways that they could have done this is probably not the worst way, except for the fact that it appears that in the very bottom or in all these pictures, I believe that that's an Amiga 2000 keyboard. With the 1000.
Yeah.
It's got an Amiga 2000 badge on it, I'm pretty sure.
I will say
so that's
this.
probably an oversight.
The sketchy tech in me enjoys this photo of the Amiga tank mouse when they've cunningly stuck a couple paper clips or something in the holes and just put some gator clips in there.
That's real hacking.
That's the way I like to do it right there, sketchy style. So thumbs up to that. Hey, listen, I'm glad. I'm not happy that they butchered up some 1000s, but I mean, they probably didn't really do a whole lot of damage to them. They probably, you know, and hey, if they're decommissioned or whatever, you know, and they probably only did a couple. A lot of people are going to see this, so I don't have a problem with it. Let them, you know, and this was a big deal. It's funny, this is one of those events that happens, like, I don't know how many times Andy Warhol actually used an Amiga 1000, but by God, he was at that one event, and they took pictures, so by God, that means it's part of his roving museum. It's going to be in there. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if any of our listeners ever check this thing out, if you go to the Andy Warhol Museum, which I don't even know, there's not a whole lot of information on this on this particular page. So this might be a work in progress. We'll try and follow up when we can and let you know when and where this thing is going to be on exhibit.
Very cool, Boat.
All right. We're going to talk about some games now, and there are some games in development. Now, normally we don't cover games under development, but
I'm going to make that part of the intro to this section. It's like the 5th time in a row you've said that. I don't usually talk about these games, but I couldn't help it.
Yeah, because when it's stuff that I care about, I talk about it. So that's really how it works. Pitfall 2, Aaron, one of your favorite games of all time, is getting an Amiga release.
Not this
Check this
version.
out. This is
the arcade version or something, isn't it?
Oh,
look at
that. I take it all back. So this is not a good game, you're saying.
Well, I mean, this looks, I don't know what this is from. Let's see if they've got it written down here. Because this, I mean, I don't know what they're porting over, but this does not look like it.
Maybe this was like the IBM PC Junior version.
Oh
no! It says it's a fully working, completable port of the C64 release. So did you never play the C64?
I've never played it on the C64.
Yeah,
but you can tell it's just at the beginning of it. It looks totally different than the one I played on the Ataris and on the Coco. So I'm not gonna bury it. All right, because I do love Pitfall 2. I think it's great. But I haven't played this version. And it might just be different looking, but it looks nothing like the Pitfall 2. So, I mean, you've played Pitfall 2. You ever seen one?
I mean, it looks a million times. The fidelity is much greater. This is obviously, they're taking the code from one of these ports and updating it with with more high fidelity graphics. I mean, look at the gradients. This could be an AGA game, Aaron.
Plus Quick Claw there is not in the original Pitfall 2. There is no ladder and crap to him. I mean, there's a big long road there. You have to bypass that skunk. You have to. It's not easy, man. But it's not like that. You know, the structure's wrong. Well, no, I've never played C64 version. There you go. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
Rob Flacco Herod just said that these pics are not from the C64 version. That's what he said. So there you
okay.
go.
Okay.
So-
Well, we'll continue to keep an eye on this, but I did want to bring it up just because I know that you do like Pitfall 2 a whole lot. In fact, didn't you beat Pitfall 2 not long ago?
I beat Pitfall 2, except that the Atari version screwed me with all these additional levels that they have hidden in there. I was like, what? You remember that? I've never been so stunned.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah, a great game. It took me years to beat it, but I finally beat it.
Here's another upcoming Amiga release, Aaron. There is going to be a OCS port of Gradius coming to the Amiga. Now, if you've played a lot, I think that we played R-Type on an earlier version of Amigos, and that game suffered from a pretty good amount of slowdown. It looks like that the goal of this project is to eliminate all of that and make an arcade quality port of Gradius. Now, are you as familiar with Gradius, Aaron?
I mean, I've played it. The R-Types of Gradius is not necessarily my bag. I mean, I've played them, but this does look pretty. I mean, looks like it's moving at a pretty good clip here. It looks okay. I mean, if these are your type of games, and some people just live and die by these. And I'm not condemning them because I don't have a problem with them. I'm not very good at them, to be completely honest.
This says then all of these game news stories come to us from our boy Neil over at Indie Retro News. He is the man, and he writes that this game should be playable with an OCS system, 512K chip, and 512K slow mem or better.
Nice.
So
That's good.
play it. Yeah, so that it technically could be played on the Amiga 1000, although he says that a bare-bone Amiga 1200 is recommended for more fluid gameplay. So I'm guessing speed is probably affected at some point. But
fluid gameplay
at any
is
rate,
overrated, Bode. Let's face facts.
Yeah. So this is just another new announcement of an upcoming port, another great arcade port coming to the Amiga, which is super exciting.
Yeah, looks good. Looks real good, Bode.
All right. And finally, our last game news, Aaron, comes to us from also from our friends over at Indie Retro News, a.k.a. also Saberman. Saberman and Indie Retro News kind of work hand in hand.
How does Saberman get these scoops, Bode?
Listen, he's got his ear to the ground and his eye to the window. That's all I can say.
It's amazing how he does it. He's the king. He's the King Dong of getting these super duper scoopers.
Turbo Sprint, Aaron. Do you remember Sprint on the Amiga, or I mean in the arcade with the big wheels and everything?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I remember this too.
Yeah, so Turbo Sprint is coming around the corner right to your Amiga. This is beta version 1.4. I guess you can actually download a beta version of this right now from McGeezer's itch.io account. So if you're a fan of these single screen, non-scrolling, top-down racing games, sort of like Super Hang-On, this of course, the Sprint series is what started it all.
Super Hang-On?
Or not Super Hang-On, sorry, Super Off-Road.
You blew my mind. This looks this is like Indie Heat, sort of. You played that on the Amiga.
Okay. So yeah, just another cool arcade conversion coming our way.
I wish racing was really like this. You got a bunch of guys ramming into stuff, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, there's a tornado that's just running through. It's just running through the playfield. Oh, yeah. That would spice things up considerably.
Absolutely. All right, now, finally, we have a story about a 30th anniversary worth celebrating, Aaron. Okay. Lemmings turns 30 this week.
Ooh.
It's hard to believe that in 1991 we first saw those green-haired, blue-bodied creatures rolling around town. Do you remember the first time that you played Lemmings, Aaron?
The very first time I played it, it probably was on the old Amiga 1000 in a huge batch of discs. So could I sit here and say like it was a eureka moment? No, I was probably like, hey, this game looks pretty good. I'll set it aside in this pile of 20 discs, and I'll put this other 70 discs back in the box. That's pretty much the way I looked at it. But yeah, this is one we've played many times since then, and it was a huge hit.
Yeah,
back in the day.
So happy birthday to Lemmings, and here's to 30 more years of endless remakes and putting it out over and over again to greater or lesser extents of being worthwhile to play. It
is basically timeless, though. You could go back and play this when no matter what system. Oh, I mean, some are better than others, but I mean on the Amiga, You fire this thing up. It's just as much fun as it was the first time I played it. When me and you played this 2-player style, that was sort of fun too. I hadn't got to do that much, so that was fun too. I like that. Thumbs up to that. A great release back in the day.
Our next story, Aaron, comes to us from our Discord channel. The one and only Lobsterminator, way up there in Finland, has been futzing about with the old C64. He's using a program called Lynx, a text-based browser, and he was actually able to load up everythingamiga.com on his C64. How cool is that?
I love it, man. That's neat. I didn't know our site had the ability to be seen on something like that. So that's
I
cool.
think I give all the credit to Jason Warrens.
Yeah, of
he
course.
personally coded he coded our site from the ground up from nothing. And so he I think he just put in the Lynx plugin. I think it's an exe file. That's how it works, right?
You got me. Listen, all these hosers are also geniuses.
Yeah.
I've noticed. So, yeah, and Jason's a technical wizard. So, yeah, well done. He's in the chat. Good job. Attaboy, Jason. Well done, sir.
Yeah, and thank you, Lobsterminator, for browsing over to everythingamiga.com.
Yeah, neato. For all your C64 browsing needs, please stop by.
And finally, Aaron, let's talk about our new Amiga hardware pick of the week.
All right.
This comes to us from RetroRewind.ca, and this is the Diag ROM 1.2.1. This is the diagnostic ROM chip that you can put into your Amiga 500, 600, or 2000. And so if you have an Amiga that has some sort of issues and you want to figure out what's going on, you can you can take out your Kickstart ROM, you just pop that out and pop this bad boy in, and it will dump all of the data into the serial port so you can run your tests from another machine via a null modem cable and a terminal. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Pretty slick. If you look at the menu there, gosh, I wish... Have you ever used these diagnostic chips to do any...
Never. When
work?
a machine breaks, I throw it away.
Well, no, when the machine breaks, you broke it. And so you know what you did wrong.
Both can be true.
You need to buy one of these and have it on hand full time, Boat, along with maybe a technician. I can't tell you how helpful these things are. I've used them I've never used one on the Amiga, but I've used them back in the day to troubleshoot PC stuff. And man, they're good, especially when you got real wacky stuff that have happened, like certain chips have gone bad, or you've got a memory issue. Because memory issues are a good example of something that could just plague you. They can be intermittent, and they can cause you all kinds of problems. And you need something to diagnose this for you. It's hard unless you just get lucky, And by the time you've sat there for 1,000 hours pulling junk out, especially in the old days where you couldn't just pop out a sim. I mean, it was a lot harder back then. And the Amigas are from the old days, so it's still hard. So yeah. Diagnostic ROM, I'm down with the clown. Plus the price is right. You can't beat it for
Let's talk about
$11.
the price. 11 Canadian dollars, Aaron.
Yeah.
That's something like $9 US. That's hardly anything.
Yeah.
And in this world of overpriced Amiga hardware, it's good to see somebody making stuff in-house like Retro Rewind does and putting it out there at a price that everyone can afford.
Yeah. That's a heck of a bargain.
We do thank Retro Rewind, the official sponsor of the Amigos podcast. And thank you so much for supporting our show, and please support them.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron, it's time to talk about colonization. Let's do it. We've put it off long enough.
It's time to dive in, is it? This is quite a game, Boat, to go into. So we're going to just kind of approach this in a we're going to
systematic fashion
compartmentalize the various aspects of this game. But before we get to it, let's get to the basics, Boatster. I'm guessing since when we picked this, you seemed puzzled that I would have ever played it. I'm assuming you've not played this before. Would that be a correct assumption?
I'd never played Colonization.
But you had heard of it, because I knew you were into Civilization, weren't you, back in the day?
Yeah. And I think, when I first heard this, I thought that this was like an expansion, because later on down the line, I think one of the later Civilizations had an expansion called Colonization. I could be wrong, but I seem to remember that.
Colonization got re-released in 2014 on a newer engine.
Oh, okay. I knew I'd heard of it recently.
Yeah, and I think it was 2014. I've also heard that I haven't played any of the more modern civilizations, but I have heard that large chunks of this game were sort of I heard more. There's more of this game in the new Civs than the old Civ.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Because I played a ton of the new civilizations, and this is much more. I was much more at home with this game than I was when we played Civilization 1 on the Amiga, which was pretty foreign.
So this game came out on the Amiga in '95. Now I will say this: its first release was on DOS in '94. Now, and we'll get to that in a moment. I want to get into that. This was published and put together by MicroProse Labs. Of course, we've covered some of their stuff on the show. They were on the Amiga. They developed Ancient Art of War, B-17, Dogfight Pirates, Pirates Gold, Super Tetris, bunch of stuff. And of course, this was designed by Sid Meier and Laurie Sennett. Of course, Sid Meier, if you've never heard of him,
most famous for Covert Action.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I looked at what he did. I mean, listen, we've talked about a lot of designers, and granted, Sid Meier, he didn't code these for the Amiga, but he came up with the game. Listen to this is the stuff that appeared on the Amiga that he designed: Civilization, Covert Action, F-15, F-19, F-117A, Pirates, Railroad Tycoon, and Red Storm Rising. Pretty good games for the most part. I haven't played Red Storm Rising. I've played all the other ones. So this guy's had a good track record back in the day, obviously. The crew that worked on this were pretty skilled. The graphics guys, Drew Northcott and Scott Johnson, had worked on a bunch of stuff between them, including stuff like Hired Guns, Pirates Gold, Lemmings of all things, and XCOM. So these guys
pretty a team working on this thing.
Right, and the coder on this was also the same guy that did graphics, was also the same, was one of the coders, Scott Johnson. So I mean, he coded in for Hired Guns and XCOM, and Walker was another one he worked on. I love Walker. The music on this was Alistair Brimble. You ever heard of him, Boat?
A couple times.
He worked on everything. Tons of the Dizzies, Arcade Pool, Agony, Alien Breeds, Body Blows. I did read something wacky on Hall of Light on this one. Brimble said that he was doing the music for this and he was running out of time. And so he offloaded some of the music to a guy named Anthony Putson. Okay. And this guy was uncredited in the game. And so Brimble said he was unhappy with that. So I don't know the whole story behind that, but so he did some of the music.
Well, the background music in this game is a lot of covers too. Like there's a lot of old timey music. I play in this old timey band. There's a whole association of us, Aaron, in West Virginia called Friends of Old Time Music and Dance. And all we do is we play a lot of old. It's not really like bluegrass. It's a different genre, but it's just sort of like old time music. It's from like music from the 1800s and stuff like that. Like, I guess like post Civil War. Yeah, Americana. There we go.
My
and
buddy
like old Joe Clark is in this song. A bunch of tunes like that. So I'm sure that there is some original background music, but then there's also some covers too. It's a nice mix.
I'm assuming they arranged it or whatever.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
I will say, while we're talking about it, the music in this, I got to give them credit. They've got several cuts, and they play just long enough to not wear out their welcome, and then they sort of scoot along. Then the next cut will come on, and so I thought that was okay. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
I'll tell you.
I turned off the music eventually.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 13 tunes in this game. And for an Amiga game, that is astounding. You never get that. So that's definitely an A+ in my book.
And that is one of the few areas where the Amiga version I thought was superior to the DOS version. But we'll get to that in a minute. Of course, DOS was stuck. They were still in the Sound Blaster era, and it was a lot of that MIDI type stuff. So now, I played the AGA version of this. Apparently there's an ECS version which I didn't play, and I see like someone in the Discord was having trouble finding
Pixels he was looking for it, but I don't know if he never found it or not. At least the WHC version. I never saw. I tried to find some different screenshots and things. I'm not sure what would be different in the in the other version. So maybe this is just one of these things where somebody said one time that there was one and that it never actually happened. So who knows?
And the funny thing is, if this is an AGA game, again, we've talked about, I don't know exactly what they did because
gradients in the sea.
Like, I mean, graphically, this is inferior in a lot of ways to the DOS version. which was
Yeah.
surprising.
We're used to that though.
Well, no, I'm not used to it. Not, I mean,
think about the time period this was released, 1995.
no, it was released for DOS in '94. I will say this is
The
superior
Amiga came
to
out in
the
'95. Yeah.
there were two versions for a PC, a DOS and a Windows version. I had a heck of a time finding footage of the Windows version, but I finally found it. It was for Windows 3.1. Okay, think about that for a minute. And it is closer to the Amiga version in terms of the way the setup is than the DOS version. The DOS version is much more like Civ 1 in terms there's not multiple windows like there is in the Amiga version. We'll touch on that down the line. Well, I guess we're talking about it now. This got converted to, like I said, DOS, Windows, and the Apple Macintosh, which I can't find any. I've not seen any video of the Mac version either, and I looked for it. So I don't know if no one's bothered to do it. It's for the Mac Classic, it says here, but I don't know enough about the Macs to make a decision. So like I said, there were two versions for DOS. This game the Amiga version was sort of derived from the DOS version, and then both those I think were kind of used on the Windows 3.1 version. The Windows 3.1 version, this is hot garbage. All right, no, don't do that. Don't play that one. The DOS version has a lot of things going for it that the Amiga version doesn't. It's got better. I read that you could get better sound effects in this if you had a certain amount of memory or whatever. But I fooled with the settings, but I never got really the sound effects I did in the DOS version, which had really cool, like a much more like sound effects, not just music, like chopping wood and metal clanging and cannons firing and stuff like that. The screens where you would on the Amiga version, when something would happen, they'd put this screen up with like a graphic. It'd say like founding a colony or something. It'd be like a picture. Right. And the picture is all kind of weird looking and washed out. You know what I'm saying?
Kind of like an engraving almost, yeah.
Yeah, on the DOS version, they're in full color.
Really?
they look perfect. I don't know why. Huh. I don't know what happened there. Weird stuff like that. That I couldn't figure out. Also, the DOS version had a real cool opening. Like this version didn't have a cool opening. The DOS version, when you pick which kind of when you pick your difficulty level, in the DOS version of this, they had different guys in different dress for each level, like more splendid than the last, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you pick the country you're going to play, you get to see the different pictures, different guys that represent the countries. None of that in the Amiga version. I don't know why. I don't know why. So that was kind of weird. I guess they shortcut it. So maybe you're right, Boat. I'm starting to think that maybe you caught it. They did kind of a not as good a job.
Well, let's talk about the whole windowed experience thing.
Yeah, please.
Because this is something that I've seen in Mac games before. Yeah. For example, when you're playing the original SimCity on Mac, like all of those different windows, and I just haven't spent enough time with the PC version to know all of the windows. Like you've got like the main city window, and you've got the things that you can build window. When you launch the game, you still see your desktop running in the background, and those windows just fit on top of it like they're application windows, like you've got the clock open or something like that. Yeah. And that's the way this game looks, but I don't know if that's actually the way that things are. I never tried to move. I probably should have. I never tried to move around in this game. Unlike the DOS version, when you're looking at your colony, it's like your colony, your overhead map is in a window, like an Amiga workbench window.
Yeah.
You've got different things in different windows, but it's not like you can still see your Amiga desktop running in the background. It's a weird look, and I thought, well, maybe it's because they were porting it as part of like the Mac version, and they were doing that with the Mac version. But I'm looking right now on the Macintosh Garden website, and the Mac version looks exactly like the DOS version.
Yeah.
So that wasn't the case.
I couldn't even find it. I will say this: you can resize and move your windows in this perfectly. It's just like running a proper, it's just like moving around windows. So yeah, and I know we're getting into the technical stuff before we get into the game, but it's sort of impertinent to the game because I most of what I played this one was DOS, okay, back in the day. So coming into this really was a whole different experience, and I don't know if I liked it better. I still haven't decided. After playing it, I went back and played the DOS version a little bit this week too. There are some things that this does that's weird. If you do something or click somewhere that the game isn't prepared for, you sort of get a thinking cloud that just sits there perpetually until you click off just somewhere else.
That was annoying because what you don't want to do normally when a computer is thinking, the last thing you want to do is start clicking on stuff because you can get it confused.
Yeah.
But that's what you have to do. Also, I had issues with messages overlapping in the wrong order, where I'd have somebody trying to tell me something, but I couldn't see it because a different message had popped up. And I couldn't move the windows around, like, because you couldn't move, like, it would make me click OK on a lower window before I could see what was on it.
Priorities on the windows.
Yeah, the priority. Yeah, window priority. That's it. That's the technical term. Not good.
Something else I thought was odd on the DOS version is like you can move your units just with the arrow keys, you know, which on this they've got the little movement box.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
That's a Mac thing, and it's horrible.
Did you get used to it?
Are you sure you couldn't move your guys with the arrow keys? I want to say that you could.
I could not get my guys to move with the arrow keys. I had to use the box.
I always ended up using the box because my hand was on the mouse anyway, but I thought I remembered seeing something in the manual. Who knows? Maybe the manual was wrong.
I emulated this, and I didn't emulate it at first. At first, I was going to play this with but I had trouble saving my game.
Yeah, and you've got to save your game.
And so I couldn't even emulate it on the PC and use the save. I had to just use like a save state to save the game. I had trouble saving this. That's what it is, the numeric keypad. I didn't use the ones on the numeric keypad. So your mileage may vary on some of this stuff. If you're going to play this for real, and you're not going to play this and beat it in one setting unless you're some kind of mega god, you're going to want to use an emulator that's got save states, or play this the appropriate way on the Amiga, not try to be cute with it. So with all that said, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in a bit, let's talk about the game itself. What is colonization? Bo, do you want to give us that? You're good at explaining this stuff. Explain what's going on here.
Sure. So in this game, you choose a country, and you set sail from your original country in Europe to the new world, the quote-unquote new world. And the new world in this game is not necessarily the United States of America, but it is a very America, or let's just say a North-South American deal. This is like the Western world, basically. And so you land in a place that's not unlike, Virginia or someplace like that, where you have lots. It's not a tropical landscape. You've not landed in Mexico or something like that. You've landed somewhere with a lot of dense woodland forest and stuff. And what you do is the game is basically you farm the land, you collect resources, and you trade. What makes this different from Civilization is that you are constantly having to go back and forth to the mothership. That is the original land that you come from.
Yeah.
To get new colonists. Colonists just don't grow like they do in Civilization, where you've got babies having babies. It's a horrible thing. But the what you do is you have to go back and you actually have to get people to come to your colony. And so the growth of your colony is much different. But anyway, I don't want to go off too much on comparing this to Civilization. Let's just talk about it on its own terms. So basically what you do is you are able to farm the land. You can do different things, like you can trap, you can plant cotton, and you can harvest cotton. You can mine for ore, and around you have the natives. Okay, these natives are represented by real Native American tribes, and so you have like the Sioux and the Iroquois and all this stuff. And their settlements are where your people can go to learn new skills. Okay, and this is sort of a thing that's also different about Civilization. I'm just not even going to try. I have to compare it to Civilization because there are so many things.
It's natural.
People have played Civilization, I think, more than Colonization too, and so it's helpful to have that. So in this game, it's a very micro level game. You're looking at individual settlers so much more than you are in Civilization. In Civilization, you've got workers and they're out doing stuff, but you don't really care about them. What you're trying to do is you're trying to develop different technologies and build wonders and get your military buffed up and stuff like that. And in this one, you actually have to care about every single person in your colony.
Yeah, it's big picture versus small picture stuff. You're worried about having enough cotton picked to make clothes, or feed your guys, or having enough lumber that's been kicked off out of the trees. It's much more small. It's much more tiny interest than you would have in something like Civilization. That's one of the huge differences, I think.
Absolutely. And it's also different. Like whenever you go to pick up people, Okay. Sometimes waiting at the docks, you'll have like a master carpenter and you're like, yeah, master carpenter, cool, I can use him. But sometimes it's like, like petty criminal and you're like, oh boy, do we want this guy on our team or not? But
Yeah.
of course you do, because you got to have people.
Yeah.
So what you do is you haul that guy back, and sometimes he'll go, you can direct him to the nearest native settlement, and they will teach him how to do something. Okay. And it seems very reductive that it's like, and this is one of these things that is probably would be done differently if the game were released today, where it's basically just like your guys just stumble into an Indian village and they're like, hey, you want to learn how to become an expert fisherman? I'll teach you. And then they live together happily. You just drop this guy off, I guess, for 6 months or whatever, and then he comes out a master fisherman. But that's the way the game works. That's the mechanics.
I
That's
like
how
the
you
fact that they
teach your
just
guys.
get like, hey, you're new to our land. Here, want some? Here,
Right,
we'll give you
right.
this big chunk of land. It's like, thank
Yeah.
you. The natives
Like I
are
said,
super friendly in this.
Yeah.
Until they're not.
Until they're not. And so the game progresses along, and there are several other things that are going on besides just survival. So at the same time, you're trying to foster a sense of liberty, and that's done through an organization called the Sons of Liberty. You're trying to convince people that it's a good idea to want to be independent. And the aim of the game, you win the game. It's not like Civilization where you have multiple win conditions. There's no like scientific victory in this game. You win by fighting a war of independence against your original, country and winning that war. And so while you're doing all this other stuff, you're recruiting various founding fathers. And it's a very American-centric game. I mean, they try and play it off like it could be anywhere, but it's America.
Well,
because you're hiring freaking Benjamin Franklin to come and work for you.
Yeah, they give you the option at the beginning to not play in the physical United States. You can have it'll be a change the land, but yeah. This game obviously is based on what led up to the American Revolution. It is neat that they used legitimate. I mean, you're going to see Paul Revere and Ben Frank and all these guys. You're going to see them in the game, now you can't go into this thinking that you're going to get a history lesson, because that would be incorrect, because you're not going to be doing stuff that happened in history, even if you try. But I like that aspect of it, Boat. I don't know about you. Just gave it a little flavor.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
And we should talk another thing that's weird mechanically about this game. Not really weird, but I'm going to try and explain this, okay? So you've got two basically like spheres of play in this game. This is different than Civilization, where you're basically on the main map all the time, okay?
Yeah.
Imagine if in Civilization, if you could actually go into one of your cities and see a different screen with stuff in your city. Okay, what you have to do is you have to assign, first of all, you've got to decide, okay, when you've got your colonists, you've got to decide where they go. And if you have them join the colony, they're no longer visible on the main map. You have to go into the colony view, okay? Now, the colony view on the lower left, you see, just like in Cannon Fodder, how all the guys line up in the bottom of the screen. That's sort of like what you see. You've got all of your settlers there, all of your colonists, okay? And what you have to do is you have to assign them to different places within your colony. So if you want them to plant cotton, you click on them, and then a menu opens up, and it says plant cotton, and then you click on that, and then on the right side of the screen you see all of your natural resources like in a big field, and you'll see your guy. You'll see that same guy go over there and be working the cotton. If you want them to do something within a building, the upper part of the colony screen shows little pictures of buildings, and as you advance through the game, you build more and more buildings that take the place of the trees, okay? And so you assign people to various buildings or various things. This was the hardest part for me to get my head wrapped around, because the resources appear on the main map. So your first inclination is like, oh, I see that there's like some fur over here, okay? I'm going to take my guy out of the colony and go over to the fur, and there's going to be something there where I can click on that and I say, hey, you get the fur. But that's not the way it works. On the colony or on the overhead map, all you see are the icons. You have to put your guys to work through that colony submap. Aaron, did you find that confusing, or did you glom onto that pretty quick?
Well, it's funny. I don't know how many years it's been. I mean, this came out in 90. I played it on DOS, so I would have played this in probably the mid to late 90s. So I had just enough inkling of what was going on to sort of feel my way through. But I will say, I didn't remember much, and that was one aspect of it. There were parts of this game that I would not call easy to ascertain upon glance. I mean, it requires some thought and some trying to figure stuff out. And I had to start over 1,000 times because of just screw ups I kept making. The colony screen, once you understand how it works, it's not too bad.
Yeah,
But I mean, it is nutty at first. It's actually laid out pretty well. It's weird, like I said, when you've played Civilization, and all of a sudden now you're worried about who the guy is that's going to be cutting your lumber, or whatever, or who's cooking up rum, and all that stuff's sort of important for your trade routes and stuff. It is what I would call micromanagement on a grand scale. I mean, you're literally managing these individual people to do these individual tasks. So if you don't like that sort of game, and I don't normally, I know Boat said, "Why did you pick this? This isn't the kind of game you play." I don't know why I played this, and I can't figure it out. But that's what it is. And in some ways, it's kind of neat. They give you when you're picking jobs for your colonists, they give you a ton of options. It's almost overwhelming, and certain options require certain types of stuff. You got to have hammers. You got to have lumber or cotton, or you got to have this or that. You've got to so they can do their job. Or sometimes they can overperform and you've got too much stuff and you've got to build somewhere to store it. That's when you get into building buildings. You're building armories and warehouses and docks, all this stuff, just like a proper city would have. But I mean, all of it's going to require your attention. They're not going. It's not going to happen on your. There's no the computer. It's not going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. You've got to clear land and stuff like that. So that can be overwhelming real quick. I didn't play this on the more difficult levels. I played it on the basic level because I knew I was basic. But I've read that like on those upper levels, the game moves a lot faster and is a lot tougher. On the lower levels, they give you you've got plenty of time to kind of figure out what's going on. I mean, things can still go south on you, but you've got plenty of time. Once you've actually taken once you've, like, for example, gotten a bunch of fur or whatever, you could put it in your boat. And you could go back to England, which you have to go back there when you pick up more passengers. And you can go back, and hopefully the market will be in your favor, and you can make a few bucks. I was perpetually short of cash in this game. I don't know about you, Bode. Did you find yourself cash short in this game a lot?
What I discovered is that raw materials are not the secret to financial success.
Yeah.
You've got to set up a weaver. You've got to set up a guy that can make the coats. All of the things, because if you take a bunch of furs over to England, they're going to laugh at you.
Yeah, I took a bath on just so many things because I would bring them back over from England, and I'd try to sell them to people, and like the Native Americans would lowball the heck out of me. I was like, man, I can't. I'm getting killed here. And these guys, you can haggle with them. But it doesn't take much to piss them off, and then you're boned, and then you're stuck with all this stuff trying to figure out how you've got to unload it for whatever you can get. You've just lost. You spent all that time and getting it, and you've lost all kinds of gold. So, the trading in this is I'd say is probably the most vital part of the game. You've got to learn. I mean, I remember doing this back in the old days, and I did a little bit this week. Is you can set up trade routes, and once you find a trade route that works for you, it'll sort of automatically do it for you, that's handy once you get a nice little fleet going.
Yeah.
But trading is big part of the game.
I think the most annoying part of the game for me, and I discovered this too late, is that you really, at the beginning, they don't make it abundantly clear that you can bring back tons and tons and tons of people when you come back, from your country. So I spent a big part of the early part of the week just bringing back one guy at a time, because I thought you could only bring back one guy at a time. And that makes your colony grow so slow, and the game just moves so slow because you can't do anything because you don't have enough manpower.
I noticed that and it's the same on the DOS version. They do a real crappy job on the England screen, on the boat dock screen.
They could have improved that a ton.
Yeah.
Like you said, the colony view looks great.
Yeah.
Like once you understand what's going on, everything's there. It's easy to figure out. When you pull into port, they should have had something that looked just like that. Instead of, there's really nothing on that screen. 75% of the screen is just the sky and the ocean. Well, so that
you're right. And this particular version is stuck between being a game for a Windows system and a game for a DOS system, because you've got like you could, some screens will let you drag and drop stuff, sort of. Some won't. Some require keyboard shortcuts. Like for the longest time, why can't I buy anything here in England? Well, it's because you don't have enough money, and you have to hold the shift button down when you drag it over to your boat, so you can buy less than 100. Little things like that. Now,
that I agree with you 100%. All of the drag and drop stuff, the inconsistency with using the mouse and using the keyboard, that is the absolute worst thing about this game.
I'm glad it wasn't just me, because that happened to be over. And the thing is, it was so different on the different screens that I would forget, and so every time it made it difficult to figure out what I was supposed to do, and that was kind of a pain, that part of it. And which brings me back to the different versions. Having played the DOS version of this, where there is none of that. And I mean, the thing is, having multiple windows, it's not a bad thing. Actually, it's a good thing. But I wish there was some consistency. I just that it made it more difficult for me to get into. I only played the DOS version for about a half hour, 40 minutes, but I could remember it a lot easier, just because number one, I'd played it before, but number two, it's pretty much straightforward. It's not as weird. The interface isn't as weird as the Amiga version is. Now, if you can get past, and I've told Boat before the show, it's like this game's going to be hard to talk about because there's so many aspects of it that you forget. I mean, you're not only are you colonizing the New World, you're influencing the religion of the Native Americans. You're trying to win the Native Americans over. You're going to war with them. Or sometimes the Indians in America are going to war with the French or the Spanish, whoever's over there, because they're coming too. They're always trying to, the other countries are always trying to claim the land for themselves, maybe cut you in for a little chunk. You got to decide when it's right to go to war with them. Then sometimes they'll go out and slaughter a bunch of Native Americans, and then you've got to figure out what to do there. They'll if you're building roads and stuff, or if you go out there and loot an Indian burial mound, you'll make them mad. So you've got to make sure, you've got to decide: am I going to keep the Native Americans on my good side, or am I going to go to war with these guys? There's
a lot to juggle.
And
there's a lot to juggle.
What did you think of when you got into combat in this, Boat?
Well, I think of all of the things, with colonization and civilization, I think combat is probably the one that is the most similar. Combat is basically just dice. It's basically percentages and dice rolls. And it's completely passive. You click OK and you find out the results.
Sometimes you feel kind of helpless. Whenever it happens, and often you can't do anything about it either. You just get it sucks. But you've got to. It's funny because this game's another thing that's weird about this game. But I wanted to hear if you thought this the same way. I'm not gonna say this game holds your hand, but it will kind of sort of hold your hand for some of this stuff. But some of it doesn't give you any help at all.
Well, this game was coming out at a time when games were first starting to do this. The whole idea of a in-game tutorial, hold your hand type experience in the early to mid 90s, that was a new thing. And so I think that they knew it was a good idea. Yeah. They just didn't implement it 100% of the way. Because, the great thing about this game, unlike a game like Transarctica, is that you can jump into this and the game will basically tell you what to do. And it's great because it's teaching you the concepts of the game. Now, what this game doesn't do is give you economic advisors right off the bat, like the later Civilization games do, where they're like, your economic advisor thinks that you should build this, and your your military advisor thinks you could build this, and it kind of gives you an idea of what the game thinks is best for you at the time. You don't get any of that in Colonization. But it is a step in the right direction, and it was a breath of fresh air because it is so different than so many of the strategy games that we play.
I mean, and we barely have touched on the whole purpose of the game, which is eventually to break away. But as you go through the game, which I think this is pretty funny, as you go through the game, the British, the king becomes a bigger and bigger jerk. He's always like, he goes, we don't like your attitude. We're going to raise your taxes 7%. Then it's 9%. And that's where and so eventually you can start staging protests and stuff. And as you're going through the game, the colonists get more and more pissed off. I mean, sometimes it waxes and wanes, but generally they'll get pissed off, and that's measured, I think, is in Liberty Bells. So and it'll tell you the percentage of your colonists that are getting irritated by the British, and you can actually build up Liberty Bells with some of the people in your various colonies by assigning them political jobs, and
Right.
it'll raise the ranks. And you've got to be careful. And I don't know how I didn't get far enough into this where I could really have a proper stage of revolution this time around. But what you've got to do is you've got to be careful, like how about your strength, your how much goods you have, just the amount of soldiers and stuff you have before you do anything real rash to piss off the British. It's much like when if you're dealing with other countries' troops, you've got to be careful. Sometimes you may have to bend over and kiss the butt of the Spanish or the French or whoever, or the English, depending on who you're playing, because it's not in your best interest to go to war with these guys. Sometimes they usually won't just come over and just start slaughtering you, but they'll sack your towns and take all the money out of them, and then they'll be like, let's talk about this treaty again. And then you're like,
Right.
'cause if you don't stop them, so your choices at that point are, do I go get a bunch of people, do I put a bunch of resources towards going over to get these guys, or do I just kiss their hindies for a little longer until I can build my forces up? So I do like those elements of it, Boat. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think probably, touching on that point, one of my main complaints about this game, which is it's a small complaint, but I really would have liked to have seen some options on campaign lengths or maybe some scenarios, because I played this game all week and I felt like I was maybe 1/10 of the way towards mustering my units of the army for revolution. I mean, I was not anywhere close to where I felt like I needed to be to actually do that. And then I went and I watched a guy play this on YouTube. He did it. He actually beat the game. It took him something like, I don't know, like 12 or 16 hours, because there were all these different parts, multi-hour parts and stuff. And that's fine. I mean, these games, Civ games, are designed to be long, for sure.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to be able to jump into a scenario where you're getting ready to go to war just to practice. So when the time came in your 16-hour campaign, you didn't throw it all away because you didn't understand how the mechanics worked,
Yeah, and the thing is, as much as we've gotten into, you could play this game. There's tons of replayability in this. You're right. It is not short. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, you can play different countries, and different countries have different advantages when you start. For example, I think the British thinks that they have more people that are willing to go over to the New World right away for free, which is good. But then you've also got stuff like, who are you going to send over to the Continental Congress, whatever, and their strengths. Some people are like military hawks, and some people are like experts on trade, and some people are experts on discovery, and so those guys give you a different slant on how things happen, when you send those guys up. So there's that. How you build your colonies, where you build them, I will say there are moments in this game that are sort of like Civ. When you build one of the wonders or whatever, you get you get a feeling of accomplishment. You get that like sometimes in this game too.
You do, but I mean, it's like, you built docks.
Yeah, well,
and
I mean,
it's like, oh,
you could,
man.
like when you find the Pacific Ocean, or you've made peace here, whatever, or But I mean, it's more subdued. This game is just like I said, it's a very subdued, complicated rendition of Civilization in a lot of ways. Did you enjoy this more or less than your time with Civ, Boat?
I enjoyed this more than my time with Civilization 1.
Yeah.
But way, way less than my time with Civilization 4, which was like my ultimate time suck civilization, where I would sit down and play that. When I lived in England, I'd sit down and I'd play that for like 4 hours a day, maybe 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah,
So,
I understand.
These games, Sid Meier, he does an excellent job. He's a genius, in game design, because he skirts that line between full on Avalon Hill simulation and sort of like, I'm like not necessarily a fan of that genre, but I want to play one more turn. It's that whole one more turn thing.
Yeah, I was getting ready to mention that. That's exactly this is the potato chip of games.
Right.
You could sit through it, and you could see how. I mean, I sat down. I had two 2-hour sessions of this early in the week, and it was just like like it was quick as a hiccup, and it was over. And I was like, man, it can suck you in. I went to bed late one night for work because of this game. And I had to catch a couple hour or two here or there. But it can go on, and there's so much going on. I will say, to someone like myself, maybe at this age, I found it overwhelming, the amount of stuff going on. I mean, in a good way, I guess, because there's a lot of options. Plus, you get news. I like the fact that it tells you, hey, the price of cigars has gone down in London. And it tells you what's going on with the Spanish. The Spanish plundered an Aztec temple, and they took, they're going to go get their boat to get all this booty. They brought all this money back. And then it gives you ideas. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should go do that stuff. Maybe I should go sack the Spanish.
Again, it's one of those clever ways of being a tutorial without coming out and say, this is how you play the game.
Yeah.
So
now I want to touch on this, but we touched on it a little bit in the open of the show. So what's not in this game? All right, what you're not going to find in this game is much mention of the sacking and general screwing over of the Native Americans. I mean, you can screw them over, but it doesn't go into great historical accuracy.
There's no Trail of Tears in this game.
Yeah, you're also not going to find any slave ships coming in from Africa. That's not mentioned, which that was a big thing. You do have indentured servants in this, but there's a big difference. The omission of that, I mean, I don't know how you could have put that in this game and still had a game, Bo.
Right.
What do you think about the way that Sid Meier's approached those controversial topics?
He did it just like I would have done it. Just pretended like they didn't exist. You can, but the problem is that Benjamin Franklin did exist.
Yeah.
And when you mix the real with the imaginary, that's the problem. So probably what I would have done is I would have had a guy that looked like Benjamin Franklin, but I would have called him Sal Leotard and said, this is your guy, and in that way, I feel like, and of course, back then when this was put out, there wasn't quite, the outrage that there would be now just because social media didn't exist. Not saying that it's any more right when he did it or any more wrong now, but that's how if I were to go about it with that mindset, that probably would have been the way that I would have, because you can always just say, listen, this is a fictional world that I've created. Any, resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental.
Yeah, I'm going to give this game a total pass, and I'll tell you why. This is a simulating game. It is not, nowhere does it say anywhere on the documentation or in the box that this is a historical accurate game or a reenactment game. Like I said, it does have historical.
Well, like I said, when you put real people in it, you turn it into that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could.
So you can't give the game a total pass. You can give it a 99%.
I don't have a problem. There's some aspects to it that I like having the real names because it adds to the fun, especially if you're an American, because you know who these guys are. So I mean, but yeah, you're right. It's a double-edged sword. I also can't help but always feel like a piece of garbage when I screw over the Indians in this game, the Native Americans, because we really screwed them bad in real life. And so and you're right, it's a fantasy world, but it's hard. You can't separate the two, and I can't. Maybe somebody can. And dealing with the natives in this is vital because for either way you go, you're going to have to deal with it. So you're going to, I guess, come to grips or come to terms with it. But full disclaimer, that sucked for them. I don't know if you don't know American history. We did not treat the native inhabitants well at all, and really still don't treat them all that well. But I want to touch on again. I want to go back to the DOS version. I put a little port comparison up here between the two, and it shows you the two interfaces and how different they are. If you're watching this at home, and if you're not, the Amiga version has all of the different windows for all the different elements of the game, and the DOS version is very similar to Civilization in the boat. Just by looking at it, you can tell it's got pull down menus, but everything's taking place on one screen. Now, I can absolutely see why they made the switch on the Amiga version and also we always complain about people not taking advantage of the Amiga to its fullest, and I think they probably gave it a shot here, And so I'm not saying it's bad, but having played the other way, I found the other way for whatever reason less confusing than the Amiga version. But it's odd that they'd be so different because everything I read, our version was based on the DOS version, but they must have really done a lot of work to adapt this to use the Amiga Windows system.
It is really interesting.
It's kind of neat, and I can't think of too many games we've looked at that did it this way. Can you?
No. Like I said, what immediately sprang to mind were the mock ports of games like SimCity, but I don't think we've seen anything on the Amiga that had the discrete windowing. That's a new thing.
But I am puzzled with why the graphics and all the little tidbits that were in the DOS version didn't make it over. But again, maybe it was a time thing, or maybe who knows what limitation it was. But I found it odd, Boatster. So. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we could probably talk about this for two or more hours, in all honesty. But we might as well go ahead and have a look and see what the critics said about this game when it was released. I mean, again, a very deep game. Lemon gives us a very high score about of 8.62. That's a lofty score for Lemon. Up into 9 that's a darn good score. Amiga Computing looked at this and gave it an 82%. Amiga Format gave it a 95. Amiga Power gave it a 93. CU Amiga gave it a 91. And the One also gave it a 91. The average magazine rating for this, one of the highest I've seen, about 90%.
That's great. Well, it deserves it, I think.
Very well regarded. Do you want to... did we get any Discord action on this?
We did. We did get some Discord action on this one. Lord Soup will kick it off. He says... I overlooked it for years as Civilization's goofy cousin, but when you lock down its playstyle, it's really its own beast. No taxation without representation. Blasted limeys. He says,
disclaimer.
Yeah. Have one city with maximum food output to farm colonists. Also, kind of like the jump in the Matrix, no one wins their first Revolutionary War. Have fun, guys. All right. Lord Soup. Oh, and he also says 9 out of 10. He loved it. Ricky DeRocher says, Colonization is the cool younger cousin to the more well-known Civilization. Like Civ, it has deep gameplay that takes a while to learn, but it's addicting when you get into it. This game also includes some incredible background music. 2 thumbs up. And Jason Warnes, the king of the one-word review, says, outstanding. 9 out of 10.
There you go. I'm torn. I mean, I think this is an excellent game. I'm not torn on that. I think even with warts and all, and really the warts in this aren't like we've talked about games that had warts. This has little niggles that we don't like. But I think this is a game. If you're into this sort of game, this is probably going to be right up your alley. Wouldn't you say, Boat?
Yes, you should definitely play it. If you're an Amiga fan and you liked Civilization and you've not played Colonization because you just thought it was maybe like B-Team, Civ or whatever, give it a go. You'll be surprised.
I think in terms of options and flexibility, it surpasses Civ by a pretty good distance, wouldn't you say?
Civilization 1 for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm
now, I
talking
think
about,
what they did when they made later editions of Civilization, they probably took some lessons that they learned from Colonization and put them in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And but I, as far as what you're going to play on the Amiga, if you're into this type of game, especially if you're one of these micromanagement types, this is quite a winner. And again, there are elements of this that we just barely touched on: the exploration element, the fleet element. There's just this game has a lot going on. That you'll be surprised. In fact, this is one I'd go out and get a box copy of. And while we're on the subject, I looked this up on eBay. Boat, nice transition, right? You can get the discs, the straight up discs. For this $5 US. You can get them, but I'd go the extra mile, Boatster, because you're going to want to get the rule book. I had access to the little cards that I found up, and I looked
quick reference card.
And I found the DOS manual, but that's one thing. You're going to want to get the Amiga version of this manual to go with this, because there are differences, a lot of differences. And I found these going none in the U.S. amazingly, but in the of course, if you're in the U.K., you're laughing. I found box versions that were going anywhere from $17 to $35, so not a horrible price.
Yeah.
For this one, Boatster. So overall, though, I enjoyed it. This was my pick, so I guess I should enjoy it. But I haven't decided if I like this. I mean, there are advantages over the DOS version. It's a mixed bag, but I will say I'm happy to see the Amiga got a competent port of this that took advantage of the Amiga's special talents. Boat.
Sounds good, man. Well, let's kick it on over to our YouTube channel, Aaron. There's been a lot of action going on over there. What do we got?
Well, we did have a lot of action this week, Boat. Let's kick it off. Well, of course, before we get into anything, Boat gave this a good shot. You know, I didn't watch your playthrough, Boat. How did this first one go for you? Did you have any trouble picking it up?
Well, this wasn't my first play. I had a couple, practice plays first.
See.
But I definitely, this is still during that part of the week where I didn't really realize you could take massive amounts of people back to the colony with you.
Yeah.
And so if you are an experienced colonization player, you will probably want to throw your computer out the window. But if you just want to look to see what the systems are like, how the screens look and all that stuff, you can do worse than checking out my playthrough. It's about 40 minutes long, and I think that I hit some of the high points.
You shouldn't feel bad about that dock thing, because I did the same thing many times. And I would often just also forget and do it wrong and then screw up. It's irritating. Like I said, that screen needed work in my opinion. So don't feel bad about that one. So let's talk about what me and the Brent got into last week. We were at it again. This time, funny games. And this time around, I went with the game 3DO sort of mascot character Gex, and the Brent, surprisingly, and some might say stupidly, picked for his funny game Battle Chess. I've been waiting all week, Boat. Is Battle Chess a funny game?
Here's I've ceased to comment on these videos on YouTube, because every time I do, you call me up and yell at me. But I will say that I agree with the Brent on this one. Funny is in the eye of the beholder. And you can argue all day long if Battle Chess is a good game or a bad game, because you do have to wait forever for stuff to happen.
That's all I wanted you to say there.
But it is a humorous game. The animations are in many cases humorous. So I agree with Brent that it's a funny game. I agree with you that it is not the go-to chess game for chess players that are taking the game seriously, because it is so slow.
I will admit that there are some. This is at the skirting the very edge of the definition of funny. I ought to give you that. But the fact that he fought me that this is not slow and tedious is ludicrous. And clearly, the Brent hasn't played this off of a floppy disk or anything anytime soon. We got into. If you like to see me and the Brent scream at each other, this was
an adversarial episode.
Yes, it was. Now here's one, Boat, that we got along on. It's BAM. It's the Atari 1200 XL show, Boat. Did we just release? This just came out this week. Is this a new one?
No, I don't even know where you are.
I don't know how this came out on my. Oh, it's Brid's stupid thumbnails. I got confused. Ignore that. Don't even get me started on that.
This is why we moved this part of the show to the end.
Yeah, that's right. So here's something, just for fun, Boat. Your good buddy me put up a 4.5-hour Amiga gameplay extravaganza. You can see from this footage that the games are fast and furious as we play this game. But I had a couple streams from the past couple weeks that on my stream channel, and I thought, I'm going to bring these things over and package them up into 4.5 hours of me playing Amiga games, and by God, that's what I did. I got the Amiga, I fired this sucker up, Boat, and it was time to go to work and play a ton of Amiga games. We had a great time, had a good crowd for all these games.
Yeah, somehow, I don't remember when this stream was, but I totally missed it, and I went back and watched it. And you play a ton of awesome games. Sometimes I forget there are so many great games on the Amiga, since we end up playing what we do on the show.
Well, I've tried to, on the second, there were two streams I kind of sewed together. And on the second one, I tried to play some things I never played ever. That was my goal.
And a lot of them look great.
Yeah. Yeah, we found some winners in here, Bo. We had a good crowd. I've got the chat in there with you. So if you just want to kick back and relax and throw this on the background and watch me play 4.5 hours of Amiga games on the Amiga, this is the stream for you. It's been quite well received, Bo. So yes. I think that's a fun one. Let's talk about. Oh man, here we go. This is the This Week in Retro for this week. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so this week, speaking of Amiga news, this is actually last week's This Week in Retro. We released another one since then, but this is where we talk all about the Buffy, Aaron. We talked about this last week, the new accelerator for the Amiga that it comes in at a low price point, but really only offers you speed and some RAM rather than HDMI and other capabilities.
You seem down on this thing. I can't figure out why for the life of me. It's super cheap. It gives you unbelievable unbelievable power and memory. My God,
Well,
what do you want?
here's the thing, Aaron. You know, the Buffy clocks in at about, $130 to $200. You're edging real close to buying, an Amiga.
It's
or,
$139 and
yeah.
$179 for the
Okay.
one with the higher memory. Yeah.
Okay. And it just seems like that's a lot of money for doing something to your Amiga that I would never see any benefit from, because I only play games on the Amiga, and you're not going to, it's not like speed turns bad games into good games.
Yeah, but the extra memory would help, and this speed
How?
never hurts. What do you mean how? It just would. Memory's always good. I'm not saying
it's like AGA makes everything better.
This isn't for you, Boat. All right, but there's nothing
you asked
wrong
me
with
why I
it.
was down on it. I have to.
Right, but I mean, you don't need to kill it. I think it's a pretty good product that they've got coming out here, especially if you want to keep your Amiga mostly intact. This and not have the vampire in there, or you can't afford it, or you can't access it. Plus, there's a brilliance to the simplicity of this, and the brilliance is there's less likelihood of a lot of headaches. All right, you know what I'm saying? There's less likelihood of a lot of weirdness. Everyone knows that anything about the vampire, you get there's a lot going on, and you get a lot of weird stuff that happens.
Why are you burying the vampire?
I'm not burying the vampire, but it's a fact. The more complicated a piece of kit you've got, the more likelihood that you're going to run into problems. This thing, I think this is going to be a very stable, cheap thing to give your Amiga, your classic Amiga, some speed and some memory. When it comes out, I'm looking forward to see what it can do in the real world, Boat. I'm just kind of surprised you're killing this thing. I can't figure it out.
It's not. Listen, I'm all for Amiga hardware. Any kind of Amiga hardware, I'm all for it. Is an Amiga gamer, I just don't think that it's for me. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I understand, but we've commented on a lot of stuff that wasn't for us that we still didn't bury it. That's all I'm saying.
No, I bury everything I don't understand.
That's what you are. Listen, I'm going to start calling you the Undertaker because you bury everything you see. So. Speaking of a burial here, we're not going to bury our good buddy Jack Flack. Now, this is interesting, Boatster. The Flackster, I missed this one the other night because our power was flickering on and off, so I shut all the devices down. I didn't get to see it. But Flack goes and plays himself a little bit of Dino eggs, even though it's
Dino eggs.
I know. I've always pronounced it just like he does. Dino eggs.
That's hilarious.
That.
Do you think that they named him that because they were thinking about Dean Martin?
No, I don't think that.
Because why else would they call him Dino?
Well, because Dino and Dino are pretty close. Listen, I don't know if you've seen the Flintstones. There's a lot of puns and crap in there. That's what they do on the Flintstones.
It's Dean Martin.
Listen, no, you're nuts. So anyway, what was interesting about this is if you scroll down here, the guy that did the game commented on this video. And actually goes and sheds some light on some of the stuff that Flack talked about. He's very complimentary of the way that Flack played this. He says a lot of people that review the game don't get in there and dig out the little tiny tidbits and they give it a bad review or don't understand the way stuff works. And Flack got in there with both hands and dug into that sucker. So he's very complimentary. I always like it when people that write the games leave comments, Boats. I think that's kind of neat. So
yeah, and check out the latest edition of the Sprite Castle podcast where Flack goes even more in depth with Dino eggs.
Yeah,
and I listened to that today. It was great.
I haven't got to hear the new one yet, but I did watch some of this after the fact. Very cool. I love that kind of stuff. Now where did this come from, Boat? Holy cow! Out of nowhere, like a shot from above. It's our buddies at Pixel Gaiden. It's Eric, in fact, and he's got a gimmick here. He has teamed up with Dave in Arizona, the wide world of retro man, the 3D printing master, and they've come up with something quite awesome, Boat. Have you seen this yet?
I have. I watched this earlier today.
Yes, this is something that Eric had printed out. It's a wedge. It's a 3D printed wedge computer chassis for his Mister, Boat.
It looks very much like a black Amiga 600.
It does, and except for with a better keyboard. So. Yeah. Eric went out and got himself one of these nice mechanical keyboards, right? And then they printed this thing out, and I believe someone commented on the actual guy who put this thing together, Lee Smith's Workshop. It designed this, because Eric had mentioned in the video he was trying to get hold of this guy to throw some money his way. But this is quite a design. And when you put that keyboard in there and you shove the old Mister in there, all of a sudden now you got something. But what'd you think of this thing?
It looks great. It looks great. I love wedge-shaped computers. So, and having a special, like, discrete keyboard for the Mister sort of makes it more real,
Yeah.
rather than if you just take like an old Dell PS2 keyboard and hook it up to it, and you're just like, what are we doing here? This is like when I'm playing games, I'm using my Mister. Everything's right there,
Yeah.
and it helps you kind of create that illusion of coolness. I guess it's not an illusion of coolness; it really is coolness.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a really cool project for sure.
If I had a Mister, I would get something like this to put it in. Maybe this exact thing. The bottom of it worries me a little bit because of the grid, because I know I dump this thing right up a pop right on top of this thing. Sure as I'm sitting here, and flood it. But and the design of this 3D printed case will accommodate other aspects of the Mister that Eric doesn't even have. There's extra stuff you can get there.
You got room for expansion in there.
That's correct. That's correct. So this was great. I got to give this came out of nowhere. It's another one that's been well received. So good job. I knew the Pixel Gating guys were coming here and go to the pay window boat, and right out the gate, there it is. So with the him and sanction. So all we need now is Cody to get up in here with something. We'll be ready to rock. But good job. That was great. I really enjoyed this. And Dave once again proves his worth in 3D printing by putting together something else. He's printing everybody crap, boat. This guy should be in business, man. So good stuff to check that out if you're at all into 3D printing or the Mister or just like neat stuff. Now, here's another one. I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, Boat, is this from our good buddy Hermsky?
That's right.
What do we got here, Boat?
So what Paul has done is he's got a book here. This is the games collection for the Spectrum. This is from the Personal Computer Century series. And what he's done is he's opened it up and he's found a program and he's typed it in and he's shown us what it is. These are awesome videos because there's not a whole lot of coverage on YouTube of type-in games because nobody wants to go through the trouble of actually typing them in.
Right.
This is a game called Outlaw, and it's basically got two phases. You've got a kind of shooting gallery stage where you're shooting cans off a wall, and then you actually go into a shootout with another person, almost like the old arcade game Gunfight a little bit. And so this is a really neat. I watched this earlier today. I really like Paul's got one of those calm, relaxing voices, and so he's a good guy to listen to. If you're at all into the Spectrum, check this thing out.
This looks like a great game. This just went up today. So I hadn't even seen this. Man, this game looks pretty. The last one he typed in was awesome too.
These games look a lot better than anything that I ever typed in on the Atari.
That's what I was
thinking.
All
of my Atari type-in games were like ASCII graphics, like not cool. So.
Yeah, both these look better than anything I ever typed in on the Coco ever. I know Curtis may differ, but these look great. So good job, Hermsky. I like the fact that everyone's bringing something different to the table, and I love it. And Hermsky's again thinking outside the box, Boat. Speaking of outside the box, we'll conclude the videos this week with our good buddy Frodo. And Frodo is at it again. More ColecoVision games. This is from a stream Frodo did a little while back. With these, and what I like with this is Frodo is not real familiar with the ColecoVision, so this is all basically new to him. And a lot of the people watching aren't familiar. Listen, I've played a ton of ColecoVision, and I'd only seen about a third or a fourth of the games he played. He's getting some real weird, rare stuff on here to go along. Like, look at that, Boat. He's playing a lot of homebrew and stuff. That looks awesome. I don't know what that game is, but it looks great.
There are so many games that I'm looking through the stream and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to play that. Oh my gosh, I've got to play that.
Yeah.
So thank you, Frodo, for unearthing these games because, I just wouldn't find out about them otherwise.
Yeah, and of course, Frodo's another guy. He's the ultimate laid back streamer. He just kicks back. He's chatting. He's having a good time. He also knows when to pull it. He also knows when to get the hook out and take a game and kick it to the curb and pull up something else. He's got good timing on that, but he's not too impatient. He does a great job. So check this out. And I think Frodo's finished up his Coleco and has moved on to. I think the last time I saw him streaming, I believe he was streaming CPC stuff, Boat. So,
I think you're right. I think he's going through, maybe he'll go through the entire CPC catalog.
Holy smokes.
That'll take him 1 to 2 decades.
It's one thing I asked him about. I noticed that the majority of the games he was trying on the CPC doesn't support the joystick. So I don't know what was he told me that. I mean, the CPC had a built-in joystick port, but I found that odd. But I'm sure he'll uncover some good, solid gold money there, Boatster. So there you go, Boat. That's what we had on offer this week over at Amigos Retro Gaming on YouTube. please check us out. Like and subscribe, as the man says. And if you are feeling particularly froggy, check us out on Twitch. Me and the boat will get on there and stream quite often. In fact, every Friday after the show, I'll do a couple hour stream of something on there. So we always look for you guys to check us out any way you want. We've got Twitch and YouTube going.
Now, Aaron, we move on to the section of the show where we recognize people that have just joined up supporting Amigos through Patreon. And we want to thank a new Patreon supporter, George Rozansky. So we welcome him with open arms. I'd also like to take the time to thank all of the fine folks that subscribe to us on Twitch. We record the show every Friday night around 5 o'clock. That's Eastern time. Whether it's Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time is still unsure. We want to thank Still Adolescing, Lord Soup, Z9K9, Peeplo, Frodo NL, Blue Train, Rule of Thirds, John Marshall, Paul Kitching, Retro Jerry, Gary Heather, Smedgar1, Paco Take, Retro Rewind.ca, Macintosh Librarian, ChronosNet, Buck Owens, Hermsky, Pints and Amiga, Uber Scuba Diver, Barkbit, Wide World of Retro, Mitsuyama, Bruce Sayer, Captain Chaos DK, Jost 80, Blah Blah 5372, Great Owl G, Christian Russell, Jigglebox, Crabs MTG, Negsol, and Eor 4077. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to us on Twitch.
Thank you.
Now, Aaron, last week there was no Patreon song, and that was to prepare your ears for what is to come tonight. So every once in a while, the stars align and the greatest musicians in history come together on our Discord channel to produce what can only be described as a musical smorgasbord. So if you know the answer to this week's Patreon Song Challenge, send me an email at john@amigospodcast.com, and I will read you as a winner next week. All right, Aaron, hit the music.
Heavy systems Inc. Modified the frag lord. Bunty. I love Pope Hunsky. Dave Velociraptor. Calvin Boylan Dexter. Jonah AK Stimulant. Luke Hudson. Alien Breather John Kirk. Bomb the base Frodo and now. Zone Size Tech Mage. Cola, Daniel Williams, Jerry Dannington, Sock Club, Commodore Kid Reflection, Carloids and Caffeine, Simon Match, Captain Crispy, Gary Heather, Cameron Armstrong, Andy Jones, Kickbox, Zone, Free Lunch, David Pickford, Bob Stamina, Simon Rose, Joseph Patton, Tim Drew, Denmark, Bernard Quinn, RMC Calendar, Matthew Larimore, Rob O'Hara, Andy Craig, Barkbit Levelord, Joe the Zombie, Shanto, Roland, Burke, Andrew Rice, Leif Kalancha, Cote, Alan Kababa, Marshall, Matthew Perron, Ricky DeRocha, Stefan Sorgan Mortensen, The Slow Nose Biggie, Ravi Abbott, Chris Boots, Creepy Dead Boy, Edwin Haddon, Blendo 75, Tinker Stars, Graham W. Febkey, Lawrence Shearer, Gary Hooker, O'Brien's Retro Vintage, Adam Battersby, Chris Passer, Josh Neal, THDO, Paul Harrington, Jonas Rulo, Kim Tommy Humberstad, takes from Greg Nelson, Benston, Daniel Benston, Daniel Benston. Oh, Daniel Benston, Daniel Benston, Daniel Benston. Oh, the Barracuda, Barracuda, Barracuda. Oh, Barracuda, Barracuda, Barracuda.
Wow. That was off the chain, man.
Yeah,
That was awesome. I loved it.
I've got to say the musicianship. I'm not talking about myself, of course. I'm talking about the other guys.
No,
in the
you're
band.
horrible.
You know,
Yeah.
Figgy on keys, Reflection on bass, Pix on the vocals, and the incomparable Paul Harrington on the drums. Boss man, getting it done. That is a very difficult song for everyone. Don't short sell the vocals either, because having to fit all of those names in a comprehensible way in a song that's as complicated as that is just really, really, really difficult. So everybody, awesome job. Thank you guys so much for putting that together. And it's a good time, the Patreon band. So we are looking for a logo. If any of our listeners want to create that for us, we'd appreciate it. We want it to be like some sort of a starship, like the Boston logo or the ELO logo.
Yeah, there
right,
you go.
Right.
You know, I will say, before you talk about shortchanging the singing in this, trust me when I say this, and this is not a slight. Like, Pixels is like Adele compared to you, Boat. I don't want to bury you.
Without saying.
I know you're the Undertaker of the show, but I'm telling you, he does a fine job. It was top shelf all around. I particularly like the cool Rush like keyboard break that was in there. Loved it.
That analog synth was incredible.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
All right. So and of course, before we go, we got to thank all the fine folks that have joined us live in chat. We had a pretty good chat, pretty good crowd here in the chat tonight, Aaron. We had, of course, Duncan Styles and Pixels at Dawn Gaming, our fine moderators. Of course, Pix doubles as vocalist of the Patreon band and the chairman of the Amigos Game Selection Committee. Duncan Styles does all of our graphics work, as well as he's the video producer of the This Week in Retro podcast that Neil and I do. So Dunk is a man among men as well.
Yes, he is. Absolutely.
And here in the chat with us, we've got ACP Design, Amiga Gamer 1200, Amiga Live, Andy Magic Knight, Barkbit, Bitstorm, Brock 101, Buck Owens, Cobrian, Commander Root, Datadog, Delamort 78, Edvin Helland from the Man Cave, Eeyore 4077 from the Brent Cave, Electrical Longboard, Figgy 78, Flask Copy, Frodo NL, Hermsky, Jason Warns, Jost 80, Kasserin, Knight Rider 82, listening from the car, L. Curtis B, listening from the cold, Mitsuyama, Olav Hope, Paul Kitching, Picard 2010, R-Typer, Real Reffy, Retro Rewind.ca, Ricky DeRocher, Riker 77, Rob O'Hara, Silly Gnome 225, Tom Tom's, Tacking Alias, Vector Funk, MicroProse, Worlds of Rogue, and Z9K9. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming, y'all.
Now, Aaron, next week we're going to shift gears a little bit. This week, of course, you chose Colonization for us. It was your pick.
That was a winner, Boat.
It was a winner. You did well with that. I appreciate it. Next week,
it's so insincere.
we're going to be playing this is another game that apes the Zelda franchise, Aaron.
Oh.
Your favorite role-playing game, The
Please tell
Legend
me
of Zelda.
2.
This is Legends by Chrysalis. This is not Legend by Mindscape. So when you
Okay.
play this game, make sure you find the Legends with an S, or you'll play the wrong game.
Legends.
The one, yeah, Legends. Okay,
And so this is some sort of top-down action,
right?
not RPG.
Exactly.
All
Exactly.
right.
So
I like
it's,
action.
I think it's only available on AGA too, so it's sure to be a winner. And of course, before we go, we want to give one more shout out to our sponsor, RetroRewind.ca. If you are an Amiga or a Commodore 64 user and you're in North America, you want to find some parts that are made on site, not to put together in the deepest holes of the Far East. Check them out. Give them your business. They deserve it.
Yeah, and the stuff's cheap, man. Cheap,
Yeah.
good stuff.
Cheap and good are my favorite words.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks,
it would
man.
suck to do the show by myself.
Virtual hug boat.
We'll see you guys next week. Until then,
Adios.
adios.